Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We just held on for a minute or so. We've had quite a few people joining the last few seconds. So welcome to our webinar this afternoon. My name is Stuart Singer. I'm one of the partners at RBP Accountants. And this webinar today is on how to make your practice perfect if it's not already. I'm sure you think it is, but I'm sure that we can come up with things to help you improve. So the structure of today's webinar is that I'm joined by Beverly Fernando. Hi, Beverly.
Hello, Stuart.
And Beverly has been a practice manager for the last 35 years.
28 years. Sorry to correct you, Stuart.
28 years, sorry. Yeah, you did say that. Excuse me. Beverly isn't quite that old. So Beverly's been the last 28 years a practice manager. And in my opinion, a really expert practice manager, and I'm sure that she can give you some very good ideas. So the format's going to be Beverly and myself are going to have a discussion, maybe for about 30 to 40 minutes, and I'm going to be posing a number of questions to Beverly. She's going to be helping me with her views on things. And then at the end of that, there'll be a section for about 15, 20 minutes where you'll be invited to ask us questions. If you look at your screen, I don't know if you're on a computer or if you're on an iPad. If you're on a computer, then you need to look at the bottom of the screen. If you're on an iPad, then you need to look at the bar across the top. There's two bars. There's a chat bar and a Q&A bar. And it's really important that you ask your question via the Q&A bar and not the chat bar. So click on the Q&A bar, ask your question. We won't answer it straight away, but the questions will queue. So once we've finished our discussion, then we'll go to the questions. And please do ask questions. We really encourage it. Thank you. So Beverly, over to you.
Yes, so hello everybody. I'm Beverly Fernando. I've been a practice manager for 28 years, the last 13 in Tower Hamlets. In Tower Hamlets in the last 10 years, we've been part of a primary care network. I'm also a practice manager rep on the London-wide medical committee. So just to say hello, and I hope you get something out of today.
Thanks, Beverly. So we've got a number of discussion points to have. The first one I wanted to ask you is, what would you say is the biggest challenge that faces general practice at this present moment?
I think the endless change and things changing all the time. Like it was fun holding days before when, I've seen lots of change, PMS, APMS, getting used to new commissioning. I think it's keeping abreast of all these things. And I think, and now to work with our neighbours, working differently, because we all like to be in our own practices with our own identity, and it's getting used to working with lots of different people, lots of new ideas, lots of skill mix.
Okay, so obviously collaboration is a big area now, and it's a big adjustment that GPs have been used to working independently in small groups, but now they have to collaborate with their neighbours and other GPs.
Yes, and we all, and most GP surgeries, well, I know I felt that way too before we went into the network, is that we're very protective of our practices and we want our identity. We think we do it better than anyone else. So I think it's very important that we get together and learn to work with everybody, which is a very big challenge.
Okay, what about other areas? Patient demand, that's obviously a big topic of discussion. What's your opinion about the current level of patient demand on practices?
I think patients now want everything at this minute now. They don't want to wait for anything. They just want access at any time to a GP surgery. And I think that's the demand. And I think it depends on where you are, what kind of a population you also have. If you have a very young population who don't mind who they see, they just want to be seen or spoken to, and they want it sorted out. Yeah.
What about, we'll talk about digital issues later, but how about appointments? Do you have any views on the most efficient system for appointments?
I think you have to look at various different ways of meeting patients' demands. It could be face-to-face appointments, it could be telephone triage, not just led by doctors, nurses, pharmacists, paramedics. It could be e-consultations. There are lots of ways that patients can access.
So in your experience, have you used systems that have taken the appointments away from the GPs to other people?
we were doing e-consultations, and it doesn't always, it depends on what you do in your practice. We were also doing a doctor-led triage system, so we had very few e-consultations, but what we want to make sure is that we reduce the workload and manage it better within the team, rather than having all these extra things. And the GPs are still seeing their 18 patients in the morning. Right. They're still doing the telephone triages. So you've got to really get it right with who accesses and how we manage that workload.
Anything else that you think?
I think the pharmacists, I haven't had a lot of experience of the pharmacists, it's only just very recently, I think can do a lot of work, should be able to reduce a lot of GP workload in terms of medication reviews and looking at other reviews, asthma reviews, doing your flu injections, that they're very helpful.
Okay, It sounds like a lot of change going on at the moment.
Yes, there's a huge surge of change, yeah.
So you touched on collaboration, and you touched on the fact that you in Tower Hamlets, where you've worked, they have been operating in a network type system for the last 10 years, was it?
It's 10 years.
Yes,
yes,
10 years.
Yeah.
So obviously we now find that since April this year, suddenly with very little warning, every GP in the UK is told that they have to join to a primary care network, and they're only given a few months to do it, and now everybody has signed up. What do you think? Do you think this is going to be good for general practice?
I think it is good. Having done it in Tower Hamlets, I think it is good. It raises the standard, the targets. You are in a better position to reach it if you've got other practices and you've got the administrative support to do so. I think it is good. The difficulty lies still is in working with each other.
Yes.
Which is always very difficult.
Yes.
But it can be done. Yeah.
I guess the key is having a good leader and a good manager.
Well, of course, you need a good manager.
Yes.
You need a very good manager. You need good administrative support, and you want your data to come in, which you can understand in terms of your searches by an administrator in a timely way. That's the way you can get it done. Rather than chasing things right at the end of a quarter, say, it would be good to do them on a monthly basis.
Okay. And do you think PCN's here to stay long term? Where do you see it developing?
I think they're definitely here to stay. I think it's good. You can share resources in terms of employing specialist people and sharing the cost of that in employing somebody, because employing someone for just one practice is not the best. It's not cost effective, and it can be very expensive.
And you found in Tower Hamlets people are happy to share their resources in that way?
Yes, well, we were in a network of 4 practices, and we employed between us a diabetic specialist nurse, which was very helpful, which reduced, she was a specialist nurse, so we wanted our nurses to also see patients, but she just saw the ones that the doctors would have probably had to have seen, so it reduced that way. Yeah.
So did you find that reduced the workload for the partners?
It does reduce the workload for the GPs, yes.
And
I mean, with all these things, you don't want to just take on everything and still do the same. It is about reducing the workload from somebody else.
It wasn't the case that within the PCN you had, or the network that you had, some people did a lot of the work and all the work, and then other people did less of the work. You didn't get any of those sort of problems?
No, because you would. It goes. I mean, the way the networks would work and the resource shared is according to your list size. So we had our diabetic specialist nurse for 1 day a week, and it was very helpful. The whole day she saw the diabetic complex patients, and it worked very well for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So if the same could happen with other professionals, i.e. the pharmacists. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. We are starting to get some questions from you, so thank you for the questions. And we will come back and we will cover all the questions. Okay, so as a practice manager, one of the things that you're obviously looking to do is to make the practice run as efficiently as possible. So what ways would you help the GPs reduce their own workload?
I think you need to look at your practice, look at your population, and identify what the needs of your practice are. What comes through the door mostly, and the telephone. I mean, the practice I last worked at had a very young population. I think you have to look at that. Communication is the key.
Yes.
You need to be very supportive to everybody in the team. You need to have a style of open door and communicate effectively and have the trust of everybody to be able to engage with you and to see where the problem lies.
I'm guessing that if you have a number of partners in a practice, they're all going to be different. So how do you manage that in terms of trying to make sure the partners all work in a certain way most efficiently when they all have their own ideas?
Yes.
Is that something that you came across at all?
Yes, where where you have individuals working together, you will always have. I mean, everybody is different, and in many ways that can be quite good for a practice, but you must encourage everybody to be able to contribute effectively. And the way you would do that is obviously to meet regularly and to talk about it. I mean, if you do not have a smooth running practice, it's chaos, isn't it? So I see the job as a practice manager to keep the place running smoothly.
Okay. How about, let's move on, and it really covers in a couple of the questions we've had. So maybe we can talk about this. In terms of the practice profits, what methods would you have as a practice manager that you'd recommend to make sure you maximise the practice profitability here?
I would look at first our current resource, if we can do it. I think to do teaching in a practice is very good. It develops the junior doctors because they're always interested in teaching also. I think I would look at your travel clinic.
Can I just cut in there and ask you?
Yeah.
So we're talking about teaching. So obviously some areas have more demand for teaching than others. Obviously in the London base where you were always in Tower Hamlets, there's a lot of teaching hospitals there.
Yes.
Obviously that's not the case here, but how about actually registrars? Do you think registrars are trainee doctors is good for the practice?
Well, you would have to register yourself as a training practice, and I think that would be good. And they are very, very good because they will see the patients that you have them either for 4 months or you would have them for a year. You could nurture them. They also you don't pay their salaries, but they would be in a nice environment where there's teaching is encouraged.
Yes.
And they see the patients for you, so it's an added resource and you get paid for it. So I think it's also good, and it's just good for the development in general in general practice.
So and I cut across, you were talking about other sources.
But I also think that the other sources of teaching is, I'm talking about the medical students that generates income for a practice and varies the day-to-day workload of just seeing patient after patient, because I don't think this 10-minute model fits really for the doctors, but I think in order to make it an interesting place, teaching, young people bring a lot of ideas to the practice.
And obviously, over the last 30 years, I've seen literally hundreds and hundreds of GPs, and the profits in the GP practice that I go to, they vary quite dramatically. And I sometimes ask people, how do you get your profits so high? And one of the feedbacks I get is making sure that they claim everything. I know this is a big area. What's your experience of that?
Yeah, I think first of all, you have to have a good, robust system in place of your claims, how you claim for things. And you need to check that these claims are done. You need to also reconcile them because they're not always correct. And then you need to chase things that haven't been paid. So it has to be done. You've got the open exeter. You need to keep checking and look, and also look for the opportunities to make sure you're maximising on what you can.
So there's two different aspects here. The one aspect is making sure that you maximise everything you can claim.
Yes.
So that's the first one. And the second one is to make sure that you are actually paid everything you have claimed.
Yes.
So there's two different...
so you should really look to see, first of all, the opportunity of, have you signed up to all the doses that you can do? Have you ordered, say, well, it's seasonal time for the flu injections, have you ordered and you're not running out, because that would stop you.
Or you order it too late.
Yes, or you order it too late. Or have you done looked at all the way what you can claim for? Are you doing the maximum that you can given the resource you have? Travel clinics are also very good. raising
Right.
income.
Yes.
Yeah.
With travel clinics, obviously, again, that's going to be depending on where you are.
Yes.
And GPs are always happy to charge for the travel vaccinations.
Well, I think you can. I mean, it is a non-NHS income, i.e., yellow fever, hepatitis B. You can charge for these travel clinics.
I was thinking more. Sometimes we have patients, so we have clients, and sometimes the GPs are a bit uncomfortable. They say, we do all of this, and we sign passports and we give sick notes, but we don't really like to charge for it.
Yes.
Have you experienced that?
I think. Well, no, because I think it is a GP's time. It's not done within in between seeing a patient. We don't do passports anymore, as it's not recommended to do so. But I think you do have to. I mean, we used to do copies of medical notes, which we can't charge for now. You've got to look at a way to increase your income, because it won't be sustainable. I mean, it's very difficult to do. A lot of stuff from secondary care is coming into general practice, which is just not manageable in 10 minutes, and they're giving it to us for much less money. So I think you do have to look at expanding it. You are independent contractors, and I think that's where. But look at your population. The travel clinics may not suit certain areas.
So what you're saying here is that the 10-minute appointment is not enough time for the GP. So you, in running the practice and trying to maximise the profit, you've got to take work away from the GPs. You've got to have a system where your staff are trained to take the burden away from the GP, keep their work to the minimum in terms of their administration work. So they got their 10 minutes, see the patient, and just get on with their work, and you're responsible to take it. Is that
yes, absolutely, because I don't think GPs are the only ones that can read the letters, and they don't want to be reading letters. There's lots of papers flying all over the place in general practice, so we need to look at who can read these and who can code them, but develop staff to do so. You can't just give things out without. So your administrative process should be very robust, and the structure should be right, and then you can grow it. It's absolutely possible.
So once you have the systems in place, and it's working well, then you can expand the practice, and as long as you expand it on a firm foundation, you can grow and increase the profitability if that's what you're trying to achieve.
I think that's the key thing. You have to have a system in place to build on, to work on, to develop it, and then the GPs will be a lot happier. I know some of you GPs might not think you'll be happy, but trust me, you will be happy when the system gets set up for you.
Well, I think some GPs are more comfortable with delegating than others. So it's a question of encouraging all the GPs to let go, possibly, and trust their manager, to take control of.
Trust it and see on a short-term basis and see the benefit. I mean, I think you will enjoy it once you see it. So you've got to experience it to actually know the benefit of it. A lot of practice managers, my colleagues, we see hundreds of emails on a day-to-day basis. It's about knowing where to look for the opportunities, about replying to that person that makes a difference in your practice, and you've got to have somebody who's able to do that. We also have holidays, just like all of the GPs, all of the stuff, but we come back to everything, and we have to look at it. So I think you have to have... And
the frustrations of being paid as well, making sure that you get paid what you're due. Is that something that's
making sure that you get paid, making sure that... Well, I think making sure your staff are happy. I mean, the thing is, you can get paid, but if you've got a lot of
when I say get paid, we'll come back to talking about motivating staff a bit later. But I mean, in terms of the practice being paid by the NHS for the work they're doing. Because again, we get a lot of problems. When we prepare accounts, it's not unusual for there to be a figure in the accounts that we can't even identify. So a lump sum payment.
It's a case of knowing, if you've got a very good practice manager, to know how to navigate once your administrator tells you this hasn't happened or that hasn't happened with this thing. You can actually follow it through. It's about getting the job done, isn't it, really? And I think that's what the GPs need to see.
And on the other side, expenses. What do you think about trying to keep your expenses under control?
I think you can't have everybody ordering everything. So I think you need to have some control there. So because you know, buying things, it's very easy for anybody. If you give everybody to do it, everyone will just pick up the phone and order. But I mean, if you're the manager that looks at the bill at the end of it all, if you look at the finance statements, you will see what a lot of wastage goes on.
Yes.
So I think it's very important that there is a tight control on spending.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You've got to keep control of it.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure everybody has their task, that
Yes.
it's all delegated to the right people,
Yes.
and that you don't waste money unnecessarily.
Yes, yes.
Because that's equally as much of the key.
Yes.
Okay, so what about in terms of the size of practice? Obviously, things are changing. There's a big push towards larger practice, and maybe PCNs are going to result in larger practice. What do you think is the optimal list size of a practice?
I mean, for me, as a practice manager, I think that if you've got the premises and you've got a workforce, why should there be a limit? I think, you know, if you can do it, if you can work with other people, the bigger the better. I really do think so. I think it's all possible. You know, you registering patients is your income. So I think that, but the problem we're having is a workforce, isn't it? We cannot recruit doctors easily. And I think if you could recruit doctors easily and you've got fantastic premises, then I think you can just sky's the limit.
I think if you know, hopefully, if the practice has a good reputation, it's run well, that will encourage people to join.
Yes.
And
well, the medical world is a very small world, Stuart. So I think that the word goes round if you're not a very good practice. I think that if it's not well managed, I think people won't come to you. You know, I know GPs who have gone for less money to certain practices because they feel supported. They feel that it's a good learning environment, and it develops them. And I think that's very important. I don't believe money keeps everybody.
No.
It's the only thing that keeps somebody in a practice. I think you have to have that.
One of the things that I feel when I've been to practices, and I've been to large practices, is the key things to make the large practice successful is sometimes having a leader, so a GP who leads it, but also having a very strong manager. And I think a strong manager is more important when you're in a large practice sometimes than a smaller practice, not wishing to be unfair to anyone.
No.
But I think I'm saying in a large practice sometimes that they tend to run more efficiently. The manager is more important to make it work. I don't know.
Yeah, because I think because what happens is that, you know, I mean, as GPs, do you want the day-to-day? I mean, I'm not saying it's nonsense, but the problems that come every time to the manager. I mean, I think you need to have a practice manager also works in isolation, may I add here, Stuart, that I think it's very important to have a good clinician that can be supportive of their practice manager, because a lot goes on in a practice where people are there's always conflict of some sort going on, but it doesn't mean it can't be managed. It can be managed, but if you leave things, it becomes like a sword, doesn't it?
So sort of off topic a little bit, but what you're saying is it's very important that the partners are able to delegate and trust and put faith in the manager.
Yes.
And that encourages the manager to develop and grow within the practice.
Yes.
It's a two-way.
It's a two-way process, and I think that, you know, the clinicians can get on with the clinicians and direct as well, but I think that there is always a place for the manager to be able to run it, and they need to be trusted to do so, and it will work very effectively. I don't think the GPs, because they're so busy, that they've got the opportunity all the time for people to keep knocking and disturbing, and, you know, because they are seeing, you know, as managers, we don't have every 10 minutes to finish a task. So, you know, we slightly have the door open a bit more. So I think it is important to have that in place. Yeah.
Okay. Just moving on a little bit. One of the areas that I've seen over the years quite often is, and I'm talking to clients say to me, there's a discrepancy between the amount of patients that the practice has registered and the amount of patients that the practice is being paid for. So how do you make sure that you are correctly registering your patients, number one, and second of all, how do you make sure that you're being paid for the patients that are registered?
Well, I think first of all, you have to correctly register your patient, because it may look it's registered on your system correctly, but it's not to the people that pay you. So I think you need to check that, and then you have to quickly reconcile that. You can also download and download the data, the number of patients, and send it to be reconciled.
Right.
But I think what you should be doing on a timely basis regularly is to just check that you are correctly registered, because on your EMIS web system or whichever computer system, there will be a place where you will see these that are not gone through, but it looks to you that they have. And you're getting paid every quarter, so I think you should just check these regularly.
So what
and
would
get them
you have
sorted
done as a
out.
practice manager? Is this something that you...
I did.
Yeah.
I did have administrative staff who looked at this as part of their job with the other things, you know.
This is a quite important
It
point,
was
though,
a very
because
big,
you know, the patients are your key source of income.
Yes.
So if you're not being paid, if you've got 100 patients registered that you're not being paid for, there's a lot of money.
Yes, and it's not just the capitation; it's whatever other things that you can get with it.
Because the average patient is going to earn you something, and it could earn you somewhere between £90 and £100 a year.
Yes.
So if you've got, you know, 100 of those patients you're not being paid for.
Yes. So I think that's a key thing, that you should first of all have that done, because your income starts the moment a patient registers with you. So I think you need to get that right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's quite an important thing to, one of the most important things. What I want to talk about now, which is a massive area, is how you get your practice digitally ready. And that's not an easy word to say. But obviously a lot of stuff happening there. Huge areas. We probably need to break it down and talk about the different areas.
Yes.
But what's your thoughts about that?
I think we are not now able to just see face-to-face patients in the day that we're given on a day-to-day basis. I think you have to look at e-consultations. I think you have to look at a lot of GPs who want to be working part-time for family reasons or whatever. Can they work from home? Can they do some remote access working? Can they do their paperwork from home? I think, have you optimized the technology? So I think that's one thing, and to be flexible with your clinical staff, because they can do. Can you get everybody together? Not all the GPs are together when you want to have a big meeting. Can you? I don't think it's the only way, because I think it is nice, of course, Stuart, to be able to sit round a table, enjoy a sandwich, have a chat. But I think, can we do it on Skype? Can we speak to each other? Because it is quite isolating. So I think it is. Have we optimized on that first?
Well, I think it's like we're doing today. You know, 3 years ago we would be arranging a seminar. We would be inviting our clients. We'd be sitting in a room.
Yes.
And that was quite a difficult thing. But now we can do it this way, and the clients, happy. You can get involved. There's less time involved.
Yes.
Clients don't need to take the whole afternoon off. Okay. There's no tea or coffee provided. But the positive side is it's much easier for clients to do this. Yes. And it's the same presumably with the GP.
Yes, and I think that if you offer all this flexibility, I think it can work. It will be so much better. It'll be a nicer place to work. So I do think that you have to embrace this.
So you've got a number of aspects. So you're talking about in terms of having meetings internally and stuff. Yes. In terms of patient interaction.
Well, you could do. I mean, There's nothing wrong with doing a telephone consultation out of a surgery. I mean, Babylon are doing it now, aren't they? They're using all this technology. So I think there's something. A doctor can work from home, and
do you think the GPs could do Skype type appointments?
Yeah, I think they could do Skype type appointments. They could also talk to their patients on the phone, and I think it can work.
Do you see that actually growing?
I know. Well, some of our doctors did have remote access, but they were looking at their bloods and letters. But I'm trying to think of like moving on from that, because I think there are a lot of other people that can look at your letters. I think it's good to. It's the demand is what we need to actually access here and address.
And in terms of other things like systems, like appointment systems, reminders.
Yes, have you got your text messaging service? Have you got, are you using all this? That saves your stamps, that saves paper. are you using all
Well,
these
it's not.
things?
It's partly the cost saving of sending text messages, but also, you know, the missed appointments as a result of, you know, the appointment reminders. Is that?
Yeah. If you could do, you could use the SMS text reminder service. Are you doing all this to reduce your DNAs, which is quite, you know, a doctor can have someone who DNAs, but you know, it's not good use of their time.
No,
is
absolutely.
it? 10 minutes.
No. And then moving on from that, we've also got the finance side, of course, which we're involved in, is the accounting system.
Yes.
And obviously we're seeing huge changes in the accounting system. So traditional accounting and bookkeeping systems have changed dramatically. Now we at RBP are encouraging our clients to use Xero. Now, Xero will enable you to become a lot more efficient with your accounting, because it's a different way of, and I don't think you've used Xero.
So can you tell me a bit about that,
Yes.
Stuart? Because as a practice manager, I haven't used it. Okay. I've used, what I did use was the Iris software, and for salaries and straightforward bookkeeping. But can you tell me how Xero works?
So Iris GP accounts has obviously been the system that the vast majority of our clients have been using for the last 25 years, I'm sure it was. But now we have a new system called Xero, and this is something that most of the software suppliers are providing, and it's a completely different way of doing accounts. So instead of the traditional way with Iris that you're used to doing, where you enter the transactions into Iris and it becomes a bookkeeping, more like a spreadsheet type system that pulls it together and produces the accounts. Xero works differently. So Xero operates off your bank feed. So what Xero does, it automatically on a daily basis pulls all of the transactions out of your bank account and pulls them into your accounting system. And then you just go into the package and you simply allocate the transactions according to the appropriate code.
So how would you set it up? You're saying it's coming straight from the bank. How does it, I mean, so how does it work? Do you set something up first?
Yeah, exactly. So when you buy the software, you log on and then you simply enter your internet banking password data into the package, and then it logs you on, and that is all you do. And then you just go on the next day and your banking transactions are magically in the package. So the advantage there, of course, is that every single transaction that goes through your bank account automatically gets put into your account. So there's no possibility of anything missing. And it also means on a weekly, monthly, annual basis, your accounting package is always reconciled to your bank.
As you go along.
As you go along, which traditionally has been the most difficult thing.
Right.
So on a daily basis, almost, you will reconcile your bank accounts.
How does it work with the open Exeter statements?
Well, we are developing with Xero a system to pull the open Exeter statement data into Xero. So that's something which, if you're a client of RBP, you can talk to us about. Or if you want to approach us, if you're not a client, we can set that up for you. So we have a specialist department that does that for you.
So do you have to be like for you to do the accounts for us to engage with you for Xero?
No, we have a separate. We have RBP accounting, which is separate to the chartered accountancy, and we can offer you a whole range of services. So we would either just set up the Xero for you, we would give you some initial training, or we can just offer you setup and support. There's a whole range of services that we offer. And the other advantage, of course, is cloud-based. So unlike the traditional Iris, Sage type accounting programs, with Xero, it's cloud-based. So I can go onto my phone, onto my iPad, and I can log into your system. And so if you were to call me up and say, look, I'm really sorry, Stuart, I posted something, but I think I made a mistake, I can just go onto my phone, I can have a look at it, and I can change it.
Right.
And it's very user-friendly, and it's designed for non-accountants.
And can I ask you as a manager, how much?
I think it's approximately, depends on the cost of the fees, it's changing. It's around £30 a month.
And the initial setup?
The initial setup depends how much you need.
Right.
So if you came to us and asked us, whether you wanted us to set it up for you, whether you wanted codes, whether you wanted us to run the whole system, then it's anything from £30 a month up to maybe a couple of £100 a month if you wanted the whole package,
Right.
and for us to completely take over your accounting system, which quite a lot of our clients have actually asked us to do.
So from a management point of view, actually, you would be able to easily see where you've been paid or not paid as well, then, wouldn't you? So
Absolutely.
It's quite, yeah,
I mean, you
so
can literally,
enhances.
it's amazing. You go onto the package, you look at the spreadsheet, any number within the package, you just click through and it takes you all through and you see every transaction. So for example, if you wanted to look at, I mean, I'll take an expense rather than income. If you wanted to look at your telephone expenses or something, you go to the telephone line, you click on it and it would list all your telephone bills. You can upload the telephone bill, attach it, so you can see them all. It's very, very,
so that
very flexible.
saves time as well. Yeah.
Yes. So I mean, that's something.
So that's a very good thing. You know, I haven't used it, and I think that's
certainly something for practice efficiency.
Yeah.
I can see the questions are still coming in, and we will. And I know some of the questions you're asking us are things that we're talking about, but I promise you, we will come back and we'll have a further discussion and things that you may have said that you may not totally agree with what we're saying, but we will cover it. So another question, as a manager, you might ask yourself, how would you keep your partners happy? What would you be doing to make sure your partners are happy within the practice?
I think you would have to, the key is to communicate very well and to meet regularly. I don't think emails are always a good way of communicating, unless of course it's to give some factual information. I think you should always encourage partners who don't speak, give them the opportunity to speak, for them to trust you, for you to create this trust within the organization, to make it better. Because, you know, as I've said before, Stuart, it's always a very difficult position for a practice manager, because the way it's set up, where they're managing, they're in isolation, partners also have each other to talk to. But I think as a practice manager, you should be there to encourage and the confidentiality to be respected.
And obviously trying to
meet with them.
But also in terms of, you know, we talked about it again, you know, in terms of trying to take work from them, take pressure off them.
Yes. Well, I think, you know, to identify what works for one partner may not for another, but I think we'll all agree that taking work off them, which is unnecessary, would be a huge help for them. And I think, and everybody to agree to that, and is that the way that everybody would be happy to do so?
Yeah, I mean, I think a good manager manages their partners.
Yes.
Trains them to be able to delegate well to you.
Yes.
And encourages them to do that.
Yes.
And obviously, if you're a good manager, then your partners will be confident.
Yes.
In your ability to do that, and that's what.
Yes, because it's not just about the end of the bank balance and the profitability. I think it's about having a happy environment for everybody to be comfortable to work in.
So on that topic, on the happy environment topic, so then the final thing I want to talk to you about, which possibly is the most important, save the best to last. In any organisation, particularly in a GP practice, one of the most important things is the staff.
Yes.
And in order to get good staff, train good staff, it's a very expensive and very difficult process. So how would you go around making sure that you retain the staff and keep the morale high within the practice?
Well, I've always, you know, been very interested in all my staff, regardless of what their jobs were. So if for a receptionist, I want to know behind this reception there's a person, I'd like to get to know her or him, and what it's about, what that person is about, in order to get them to do their job effectively. And it's about developing them as well, to variate their work. You don't want reception just picking up the telephone every minute of the day. Variate their work, and to encourage meetings, to feed back on meetings, encourage them to also have meetings on their own. Because, you know, it may be their manager they want to talk about, which is, you know, but for them to be able to be able to come back and for us to act on it. And also, you know, to have outings, to get togethers, just really to be open about things, but and also to be very flexible. I think general practice relies on a lot of people who, you know, have other commitments, families, and if we don't encourage that, we're not going to retain the workforce. Yes.
Yes, I mean, obviously flexibility in the workplace is a big area,
Yes.
big discussion area.
Yeah.
Is that something which you've seen change?
Yeah, I've always been a flexible manager because I think it has helped, and I've got to know them. But, you know, they feel free to be able to come and tell you that, you know,
Right.
I've got this and I've got, rather than just stay at home and not bother to
Yes.
turn up for work
Yes.
and say they're stressed or something.
Yes.
So I think nurturing your staff and looking at them and rewarding them and thanking them.
Yes.
I think it's very, very important. I think one of my colleague practice managers who may be listening had said to me she can open a practice without doctors, but she cannot without her reception staff.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it's very important to know how it all gets done. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've always said when we have registrars, please put them in for induction in the reception
Yes.
area first to see how it all gets done.
Right.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, the staff, you want the staff to be happy because then the patients come in, you're going to feel that. You know, I've visited hundreds and hundreds of different practices over the years. And, you know, you walk into some practices and there's a totally different feeling from the moment you walk in before you even get to the reception.
You can feel it.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, you know, I know we're in a medical environment, we're dealing with patients who are sick, who are coming in with lots of problems, perhaps, but, you know, we can have some fun.
Yes.
So, you know, it's not a problem.
Okay, I think you've probably listened to us enough. Maybe it's time for us to listen to you. So I've got some questions. I'm going to read them and we'll go through them one by one. They are things we've talked about. So the first one, I've got a question that says, the manager role for PCN collaborative working is not currently funded. Where PMs are already doing a lot of in their current practices, how do you recommend we free up practice management time and funding? So if there is a PCN and there's no separate funding, you know, how's that work? How's that going to work?
Well, because the practice that I mean, obviously in Tower Hamlets it was funded. So I think that if it's going to be, I think it's very important to have your practice manager on the primary care network, say at the board, because, you know, she needs to keep pace with what's going on. So I think to free up, because it'll be part of day-to-day work now with primary care networks, I think you could free up, you would have to free up, because in order to get the work done, because this is the way forward.
So is there some funding though? There is some funding.
There was funding for us in Tower Hamlets,
but
for the new funding stream, I'm not sure whether I thought there was management funds, but if there isn't,
there is
so we could look at that into detail. But I think it's essential you have your practice manager on there, because there's another way of increasing your income.
And if you've got 3 or 4 practices in the PCN, all the managers do a little bit, or one?
I think you should have. I was doing the finance for our primary care network, but I was also at the board to see what other things were going on. But I think if you share the workload, so maybe somebody doing a bit of the HR, because the network manager also needs, well, if you're doing it just by practice managers, everyone can take a lead on what their particular skill is. Maybe you've got a practice manager that's very good on HR. And
so
somebody's good on finance. Work out who can do what.
And give the appropriate task.
But obviously you're going to look at, some practices could be very large and some practices could be, so you could just balance it out.
So really you're just moving the resources around, and by bringing the practice together, you're just sharing out those resources in a different way. It should work. Okay, I mean, the next question that I have is really something that we've talked about. Is basically, we really talked about it, but the question is, how do you increase your income? And sort of examples, you know, was on the question, was list size, QOF. So QOF, let's talk about QOF maybe. And QOF.
Well, I mean, obviously you would increase on wherever you can maximize. I mean, the EMIS alerts you, doesn't it, to what you can claim on. But for me, I would be looking at other ways of increasing your income. And as I said, that we talked before, Stuart, about the teaching and the medical student teaching, just 8 weeks.
But in terms, so in terms of the particular question, so QOF.
Well, QOF, your DESs, your.
And how would you go around making sure that you get the most income from these sources?
Minor surgery. Well, you would obviously advertise it within your practice. If you can't, and do it for other practices,
Right.
you know, you may have somebody who's very good at you know, family planning in your practice.
Right.
You could do it for other practices, and this is also
And
a way
what
of
about
increasing.
informing the patient, getting the patients here?
Patients, if we put it on your website,
Yes.
this is what you do. You've got your reminders. You
Yes.
would look at you would look at your
Right.
who would benefit from that.
Okay.
But within your own, when you're seeing patients and anyone is due, let's say, minor surgery,
Just
do it in house.
Yeah. And the other here is list size. Now, you know, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and when I started as a GP accountant 30 years ago, I always said to the clients, the most important thing, the way to maximize your income is to increase and have the biggest list size. Now, that's what I said to people 30 years ago. 30 years later, there's been lots of changes in structures of income, and sadly, I'm still saying the same thing.
Well, I think your list size is essential. I mean, the moment your patient registers with you, that's when the money starts to come. What you do with that patient for what they need in terms of, you know,
well, I think
you need your capitation.
Sure, and what you're looking for is this sort of 80-20 rule situation where you know you've got 20% of the patients using 80% of your time, and then you've got the 80% who you never see. So obviously what you want is lots of patients you never see, but that's not the point. But the point is that in terms of list size, I always say, you know, an average practice, not there is such a thing as an average practice, you're looking at somewhere, you know, around 2,000 patients per doctor. So something like 250 patients per doctor session. So every session that you have, you would have to, so you multiply up the number of sessions each partner is working and the number of partners or doctors, salaried doctors you have, and you multiply that by 250. So let's say, for example, you've got 3 doctors and they're all working 8 sessions. That's 24 sessions times 250. That gives you, to me, an optimum list size. So about 2,000 patients per session. So I don't know if you ever thought about that.
Well, no, but I think also, but why? What I mean, when in general practice, we lose patients. I mean, where I was before, what we got, the list size didn't grow greatly because it was a very young population. We lost as much as we got. It was a high turnover. So I think you should just increase your list size and see. It won't go up in surges unless you've got a development happening locally with some flats coming up or something like that. I think you should just have that thing about just increasing your list. I don't see what the problem is.
No, obviously it's subject to whether the patients are there. I mean, you could increase your list boundary, I suppose. But then you're going to just probably pick up patients that.
Well, you can widen your boundary. There is also out of area services that you can do for people.
Any other ideas about income maximisation?
As I said, we said about the travel clinic, didn't we?
I mean, obviously, what I would say is, obviously, at RBP, we advise our clients on this sort of thing. So we're not going to give everything away today. But obviously, if you want to come and talk to us,
because if we did, we wouldn't have a job, would we, Stuart?
So you know, if there's anyone watching today that's not already a client, and you think that
there's lots of ways to do it. I can tell you
the ways that maybe we're not going to discuss today. Okay, thank you. I'm just going to move on to the next question. So payments received from NHSE are difficult to keep track of as their references are not usually decipherable. How would you advise practices to keep track of receiving the correct payments or even ensuring we even receive payments for what work is being done? I think we did cover this. So how do you make sure that, you know, you keep track of the so what we touched on before was that, you know, one thing is doing the work, but nothing is being paid for.
So you would look at your open exeter, wouldn't you? And you would look at what you're getting paid for. You would also have to understand what these codes are, and your practice manager should be able to get a list from NHS England of what they actually stand for. There is a list actually which will tell you what is what. So I think it's about understanding. I mean, there's a lot of what you need to understand a lot and how to navigate yourself around the NHS system. But I think once that's done, it's easy to do.
But do you have payment? I mean, I've seen payments that come in with no coding, just sundry payments. come into the bank. They don't even go through the open exeter statement. I don't know if this is something
Right, I didn't have.
Yes,
Yeah.
something we've
Did you?
experienced.
Okay.
Yeah. So obviously that's something that maybe isn't such a big problem anymore.
No.
But
no.
I mean, if that's something that you have experienced, then yeah, we've
Yes.
definitely seen it. And in the early days of Capita, that was a big problem. It's less of a problem now.
Yes.
The second half of the question is, how do you even know you've even received the payment? So it's the same thing.
Well, if you whatever comes into the open exeter, you would obviously then reconcile with your bank statement to make sure it did come in, because it's all very good at looking at statements.
So I think there's a number of different areas. The first of all is making sure that anything that comes into open exeter has come into your bank account. I think we can probably hope that's going to happen.
Yes.
But how about if you've done, you might have done, some medicals or something. How do you know that you've actually been paid? So you might have done patient medicals.
Well, you would have. That's why I think it's very important to have a good system in place in the first place for you to check. Everything needs to check and balance.
Again,
So have that, and you would get an administrator. I mean, I had it set up in our practice and know how to check, and I can tell you everything. I mean, the rule in our practice was that we got paid before we did the work, because that saved us chasing. Because
well, certainly that's something I think
I could help you with that.
Yeah, Beverly could definitely help you if you're struggling with anything like that. We offering that service.
Because I think sometimes you feel a bit uncomfortable because you think, okay, I haven't been paid. Shall I do the work? No, I think if it's medicals, just get paid first.
So a question that's come in here. So something that we've said that someone says they're not sure they agree with. Something you mentioned, Beverly. You said that you get paid for the patient the moment you sign them up.
You do.
The person is saying that the income starts. What it says, it's not true that income starts the moment the patient gets registered. Do we not get paid capitation 1 quarter in arrears? I think there's a bit of I think what he's saying, and I think it's the same thing, but you're saying it a different way. I think what you're saying is that you start to get paid the moment you sign the patient. But I think what the person here is saying is that you don't actually receive the money.
Oh, right. Okay. So you're talking about literally. I'm just saying that how we. Okay. So maybe I've missed.
I'm not sure that what you're saying was not right. I think.
What I'm trying to say is that the way we generate income, the first way is.
So from the day that patient's up, you start to accrue the income. The fact that you don't receive it for another quarter doesn't mean you're not earning it. You're just paid 1 quarter in arrears. So I think it's just a slight
I just want to mention that registering a patient generates income is what.
Yeah, absolutely. So then there's a couple more questions, probably aimed more towards myself because they're towards zero type questions. The first one is how safe is it to put your bank password into a third-party software, and are our banks on board with this? Well, the answer to the question is yes, all the banks are on board with it, all the major banks. There have been a couple of banks who have been a bit slow to take it up, but that's not because they haven't regarded it as being unsafe. It's more because they have been a bit slow themselves. So the first thing to say is that most of the banks are on board. Not every bank at this stage is on board, but if the bank isn't on board, there is another system. So we can manually upload your transactions into Xero. So you don't actually have to do it via a bank feed. Personally speaking, the bank feed is the better option. But if you either are uncomfortable with the idea of a bank feed or your bank doesn't offer the bank feed, then there is another method, which I won't go into today, but we can do that for you. As far as the security is concerned, it is highly secure. Xero is a huge business. Last year, they just passed 1 million users. And I genuinely believe 10 years down the road, every single business will be using a software package like Xero or Xero itself. So I don't see any security concerns at all. Clearly they have invested huge amounts of money in security and protecting, and we've been using it for some time now, and we've never had any problems. So I understand people are very worried about computer security, and I think people probably are quite naive about it as well. And lots of people don't realize how dangerous it is. Using computers, but I don't think sharing your password within the Xero software, and I'm not a computer expert, but I'm sure a computer expert would tell you more technical data, but I don't believe that sharing your password within the Xero software compromises yourself at all. But if you really feel that it's not for you, then you can do it via a manual bank feed. So that's how that would work. Another question is, I'm interested in the Xero accounting software, but I'm worried about partial exemption calculation, other things that Iris does automatically for you. If RBP was to initial setup on Zero, would this eliminate my concerns, and how much would that be, please? Well, obviously that's quite a specific question, and I'm not sure whether everybody listening to the webinar, but I can come back to you on that, and certainly without question we can do that for you. And we can come back to you with a quotation and let you know exactly what that's going to cost and what we can do for you. But I think you will find that using Zero is much easier than using Iris, and much more user friendly. Okay, I'll keep that question open, and I will definitely come back to you on that one. So that really covers all of the questions. I don't know if you have anything else to add. We just bring this session to an end.
No, not anything, Stuart. I think general practice, I mean, I think it's a great place to work in, so enjoy it, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
I think it can be done with the right support.
Thank you. Well, look, thank you for joining us today. We've had quite a number of people who have logged on, so we've been very happy with that. But Beverly is now working with us as a consultant. So if you need either a practice manager on a short-term period, or if you as a manager need some support, either for a couple of hours or a day or a week, we can offer consultancy on that, and we're pretty confident that we can improve your profitability and improve the running and efficiency of your practice. So thanks very much for joining us, and it's goodbye from me.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank
you.
you.
Goodbye.